Good evening. To start the official proceedings, I would like to acknowledge we're meeting on Jarrah country, of which the members and elders of the Jarrah community and their forebears have been custodians for many centuries and have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. So this is the ordinary meeting of Council for the 20th of October 2020, and I have to say that Council meetings are audio and video recorded and are made available to the public via electronic media, including YouTube. The Local Government Act, Part 12, Section 395 of the Act states that Council meetings may be closed to the public during the prescribed period, 1st of May 2020 to the 1st of November 2020, provided it is streamed and the community have been provided means to submit statements or questions for Council response. This is to ensure that the local government decision making can continue and remains transparent during the coronavirus pandemic. Councillors and council staff are required to continue to act in accordance with the Councillors Code of Conduct and the Local Government Acts 1989 and 2020, local laws and other acts and policies as prescribed. Where there are technical difficulties in being able to broadcast the meeting to the public, the meeting will be adjourned for 30 minutes until the issue is resolved or postponed to 6 p.m. 22nd of October 2020. So I have a recommendation, councillors. Can I have a motion, please? Yes, Councillor Rachel.
As recommended, Mayor, that Council closes the ordinary meeting of Council 20 October 2020 under the Local Government Act 2020, Part 12, Section 395, and 2 notes that where there are technical difficulties in being able to broadcast the meeting to the public, the meeting will be adjourned for 30 minutes until the issue is resolved or postponed to 6 p.m. 22 October 2020.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Petruska. Thank you. Is there any opposition? I hope not. That's carried. I need to say that councillors are wearing masks and are socially distanced as per the recommendations. We need to meet together in the chamber due to difficulties in accessing the Zoom. We have difficulties with internet access at this time of day in particular for certain councillors, hence councillors are in the chamber. Councillors are wearing masks except when speaking, they may remove them. As chair, I will keep my mask on. Next comes the election period policy. As in accordance with the election period policy adopted 1st of September 2020, agenda papers and minutes of council and committee meetings do not require approval by the Chief Executive Officer unless they are printed or published for a wider distribution than normal. Questions from the gallery during public question time will be considered by the chair to ensure they comply with the principles of the Act in relation to the election period and this policy. In accordance with the governance rules, the chair may disallow a question if it breaches the requirements of the rules. Council meetings will continue to take place during the election period. However, the following adjustments will be made to the agenda. Council will suspend public question time at all council meetings during the election period. Members of the public will still be able to make written submissions and or address the council meeting in relation to items listed on the agenda. The delegates' reports and notice of motion will not be allowed where the matter is an electoral matter. C. Councillors will limit their discussion during debate to the topic under consideration and will avoid raising electoral matter. And D. Reports for the consideration of council will be referred to the CEO for approval before inclusion on the meeting agenda. The election period policy can be viewed on the Mount Alexander Shire Council website. I have 6 councillors present, with apologies for Councillor Lesser. Councillors, do I have any declarations of interest, conflicts of interest for tonight's meeting? No, thank you. Confirmation of minutes for the ordinary meeting of Council for the 15th of September 2020.
Yeah, just as corrected.
Thank you, confirming. Seconded by Councillor Neiman. Thank you. Any opposition? Thank you. Declare the matter carried. Acknowledgements nil. Public question time. I have 3 questions which relate to the same matter, and I'll now read them out. First of all, is from Ms. Alice Matheson. The subject is Earthworks, Farnsworth Street. I'm sorry, the microphone's popping a bit. I can't seem to stop it. Number 37 Farnsworth Street has significant access options, including a new turning circle on its own land. There is now no need or justification for the private earthworks on public land, which have compromised the public path, public safety, heritage protections, council process, the permit process, and the community trust. Now that is a statement. I guess for a response, I might ask Ms. Howard, our Director of Developments and Infrastructure, to say something.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, the statement or question that's been submitted is in the main addressed in the report that appears in the agenda papers for this evening at item 9.2.1. The question that's been put was the subject, or one of the things that were raised in the petition, and I refer councillors to the response to that matter in the report.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. I'll go on to the second one, which is from Ms. Sally Captone. Subject is walking in Farnsworth Street. Could I please have my question below submitted to council for tonight's meeting? My question is, Jess Howard has previously committed to returning the walking path outside number 37 Farnsworth Street to natural ground level pre-works. Will this happen? Thank you. So again, Ms. Howard, if you're able to offer a response, that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Similar to the previous question, this is a matter that was raised by residents on a number of occasions, and the reinstatement of path access in relation to the works at Farnsworth Street will be required, and as part of the remediation works that are noted in the report at 9.2.1.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. And the last one is from Ms. Margaret Panto, and it is also about Farnsworth Street and planting Farnsworth Street. This is slightly longer. My question relates to this item, 9.2.1 response to petition, earthworks in Farnsworth Street, Castlemaine on public land, Heritage Overlay 668. Under removal of the earthworks and revegetation of the verge, Infrastructure's report says the owner has also agreed to plant / revegetate the batter / slope once the remediation works are complete. I would like to know the nature of the planting, including A, what will be planted, B, will they be plants that are indigenous to the area and part of the ecological vegetation classes of that area, C, will the work be supervised by an ecologist, D, given that importing soil normally imports invasive weeds and often introduces new noxious weeds, what is proposed to control weeds there for as many years as it takes to get rid of the new weeds? The background to this question is that the west verge of Farnsworth Street between Brown and View Streets is part of an indigenous vegetation and wildlife corridor connecting the bush along the modern railway line with Campbell's Creek, and that Farnsworth Street has potential for ecological restoration as part of this corridor, with at least 28 species of naturally growing indigenous plants still occurring on the verge. Last one for you, Ms. Howard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, just referring to the report, the reinstatement or revegetating of the slope in question will be required once the proposed remediation works have been done. In terms of the questions about the nature of the plants and the appropriateness of those plants for that area, happy for that to be something that council officers through our parks and gardens staff can provide advice on, and ensure that there are appropriate plants, and that the issue around minimising the introduction of weeds is also taken into consideration. It's something that I know council officers have been working hard to try and reduce weeds, and I know that Ms. Panter, who asked the question, it's of a particular interest to her. So that's definitely something that we can make sure we work with the owner to ensure that the vegetation is appropriate.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hamilton. In fact, I seem to remember that as a result of a submission to next year's budget, from Ms. Panter, Council actually agreed to add another $20,000 to weed removal, weed management. So she certainly has got a good influence in that regard. Thank you. All right, so that are the public question time. There are no other questions. So I'll move on now to petitions and letters. Petition sealing of Eleanor Drive, Campbell's Creek prior to bridge works. 15 September, Council received a petition from residents with 82 signatories requesting the Council seal Eleanor Drive and Campbell's Creek prior to any proposed bridge works. And there's a recommendation. Do I have a motion, Council? Councillors? Yes, Councillor Nation.
As printed, though, it's a little bit clumsy, but I think you get the idea.
But we might like to read it out. Thank you. That would be good.
Sorry?
We might like to read it so that those interested actually know what's going to happen.
That Council receive a report at the next Council meeting on the petition from residents with 82 signatories requesting that Council seal Eleanor Drive, Campbell's Creek, prior to any proposed bridge works.
Thank you. Do I have a second of that? Thank you, Councillor Corley. Is there any opposition? No, thank you. Declare the matter carried. So now we move on to officer reports. There are no officer reports under the heading of our people. We'll move on to our place. Response to petition earthworks in Farnsworth Street, Castlemaine, on public land on Heritage Overlay 668. Councillors, we have an executive summary and a recommendation. Do I have a motion to this? Yes, Councillor Nation.
I have a motion that is not as recommended, Mayor, and I'm just hoping it will come up on the screen fairly soon.
Thank you. Ms. Shepherd, are we able to see the motion are we able to see Councillor Nation's motion? She might have gone up to make a cup of tea.
Sorry, Mayor Henderson, I'm just having a few difficulties getting the screen to share. It'll be there up shortly, if you can bear with me.
Thank you very much. We'll wait.
I don't have the words. An alternative might be that Gussie sends them to us.
No, we have.
Yes.
Okay.
Here we are.
Thank you. So the motion that I put to my fellow councillors is that Council 1 notes the report and the actions proposed. 2 notes that the actions proposed will not resolve all the petitioner's concerns in relation to the removal of fill. However, the engineering works will proceed as described in the report, and residents will be consulted in relation to landscaping and public access. 3, request that the next council be briefed fully on the decisions that have led to this situation, including the heritage values of this site and the outcomes of the further consultations with residents. 4, response to the first signatory on the petition to advise of council's decision.
Thank you, councillor Nation. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, councillor Petruska. Is there any opposition? No, thank you. Would you like to speak to your motion, councillor Nation?
Thank you, Mayor. I might take the mask off for this. This is a very difficult issue and is causing a lot of pain in this area. Whatever action happens is not going to satisfy anybody. And the way our officers have, after significant consultation with all parties involved, have really focused in on the engineering requirements. It's quite clear that the original works were not satisfactory and there will be remediation work on those. It's still quite clear that the property in question requires safe access. And it's also clear that it needs to be clearly assigned as still public land and accessible by the public. So the engineering works do try to address all of these issues, and there will be there will be a considerable improvement. I acknowledge that this is not going to satisfy a whole lot of people, and this, I think, is one where we're just going to have to rely on all of those principles about safe access, about not overstepping the mark, about trying to get the best outcome for the property and for the residents. In saying that, I can really understand the upset of the residents. I wouldn't like to have woken up one week to have discovered a whole lot of plantings that we planted were pulled up and covered in dirt. So I can understand why there is a whole lot of upset, but this is our only way through, is to make sure that there is a well-engineered report that seeks to provide the access to the property, and that's all it's going to provide, and it's going to remain well signposted as public access. Thank you.
Thanks, councillor Machen. Councillor Petruska.
So I might just really briefly, there was a request in the to defer the matter for the next council, but that's not going to change anything on the ground. The reality is that the council did issue a minor works permit for access to the property. Unfortunately, it appears that a little bit more work has been done than what the minor works permit allows, and hence the need for remediation. The permit that was issued still stands, so it just needs to be done properly. So our staff has been consulting with both the applicant and the nearby residents, and will continue to do so until we hopefully get an outcome which probably eventually will not suit everyone, but the best outcome possible in the circumstances.
Thank you, councillor Petruska. Any other councillor wish to speak on the matter? Well, there being no opposition, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to the next item, which is the approval of the risk management framework. Councillors, do I have a motion? Yes, councillor Gardner.
Yep, as printed. So the council, upon recommendation of the Audit Risk Advisory Committee, approves the risk management framework.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Petruska. Any opposition? No. Councillor Gardner, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yep. Any organisation of its size should have a risk management framework. So it's really good to see the council is adopting one. People view risk as something that's about being risk averse. This document isn't, and it clearly identifies what the risks are and actions take to reduce the risk in them. And it's a way of monitoring and ensuring processes occur to reduce any potential issues to council and the risk to the staff in a whole raft of areas. And it is a living thing that will be constantly reviewed. And part of it is that any higher extremes risks will also be brought to the attention of council. So I think it's a good document. It's great that we finally got one in terms of a framework, and I would hope that my fellow councillors will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. No comments from other councillors? Yes, Councillor Mason.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to see the strategic risk register.
We're talking about the risk management framework.
Oh, sorry.
Oops. Getting ahead of
That's the
yourself
next
there.
one. Damn.
Okay, no, first things first, risk management framework. So all councillors being happy with this, I declare the matter carried, and with Councillor Primary Motion, we'd like to move the next one, I guess, which is the strategic risk register.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for keeping me on track. I appreciate it. Yes, as recommended. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder for this one? Yeah, okay, Councillor Gardner. Is there any opposition? No. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Okay, thank you. So strategic risk is risk that would make it very difficult for council to achieve its strategic objectives. And so I was very pleased to see the great deal of thought and obviously consultation across the organisation that really thought about what is going to stop us achieving what our community wants us to achieve, and what our community will tell us at the next council what they should be achieving as well. So I'm very pleased to see that climate change is in there, because that is a major risk, as you know, even those acute events as we prepare for the fire season again and potential floods with the La Nina year. They're certainly all there. And it's also about us trying to ameliorate that, prepare our population to, as part of our work in doing our ZNet planning in the community and our community transition planning that is underway. So, you know, with a lot of these strategic risks, it's not just climate change, they're almost impossible to forecast in any detail, and it's a very complex environment, and that's what strategy is about. We can only ever have a good guess at what's going to happen and use our best approach and keep on. And that's, you know, as Councillor Gardner said, keeps coming back to us as we get more information and the risks are understood more. And that's really what strategic risks are about. It's continuous management and continuous building of knowledge. So I do congratulate the officers in thinking around these difficulties and preparing us to be able to respond in the best possible way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Layton. Councillor Gardner, wish to speak?
Just briefly, yeah. So this, for people's benefit, there's two types of risk: the operational risk, which essentially CEOs responsible for, although they will identify high and extreme for council's benefit, and the strategic risk, which is essentially council's risk, councillors' risk. So I think, as Bronwyn had mentioned, climate change, things like cybersecurity, pandemic responses, community engagement, and risks associated with legislation or government policy. It is a continuous document, and as it goes forward, the risk committee will and staff will look at things and make more recommendations and treatments as we go on. So it's good to have these things in place.
Thank you very much. Well, there being no opposition, I declare the matter carried, and note that there's always risks, but it's good to know your enemy who's around. So there we are. All right, well, now that I think finishes that section and we move on to planning permit application. PA 175/2020 Sparks Road, Tewton, use and development of the land for a dwelling and carport at Sparks Road, Tewton. We've got one recommendation for approval. Do I have a motion, councillors?
Yep, I'll move it as printed, which is to issue a notice, which is to issue a notice of decision of approval.
Thank you, councillor Gardner. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Nagle, thank you. Is there any opposition? Thank you, councillor Cordy. Councillor Gardner, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Certainly. This is a sort of an interesting one. The application is in a farm zone, but it's not particularly farming area, it's bushland. It's to put in a house on the corner in what could be seen and described as a potential fire area. I do note that the planning application was referred to the CFA. There is a development of a bushfire management plan which was agreed to. So that's certainly something that has been considered and taken care of. We did hold a applicants objectors meeting and there were a number of people who were against it. I can't remember in total, it was about 6 or 7. Now, the main objections, I suppose, really, the neighbours were from what's the Tewton Bushland Association, and they're sort of a overarching document that they all sort of abide by, which is fantastic, and it is a lovely area. This property is outside of that. It is across the road, I recognise that, but it's actually not formally part of that arrangement. So I did, whilst understand they didn't like it, it isn't part of that arrangement. So the normal sort of planning areas frameworks need to be dealt with, and it was. I do also note that some of the biggest issues were about neighbour amenity, but the biggest concern was that the house could be seen, whereas all the other houses in the bushland aren't visible. But as I said, they're not within that bushland area, and whilst it might be visually unappealing that you might see the light or the house from the neighbour's house, which from their driveway, which was particularly raised. I think particularly at the moment going forward, there will be lots of pressures for filling in land. Everyone probably is going to have to accept that it's going to be some loss of amenity. To me, seeing a light or a house, whilst it's not what you're used to, it doesn't constitute a loss of amenity. So to me, it'd be more about, lots of noise right next door to each other, those sorts of things. It's the house, one of the proposals was to actually move the house backwards so it's not on the land. I think the report clearly demonstrates that by doing that, you actually will see more removal of vegetation, and it'll actually be in a potential flood zone, and it's sort of the best location for it. The officers recommended it, so that's what I would put forward to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, councillor Gardner. Seconder, councillor Nagle, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. This is, again, we're going to be faced with this situation time and time again. So it's nice to see that the way we've handled this report, the conditions are not quite draconian, but they're fairly strict and fairly well thought out. So that was my own reason for supporting it.
Thank you, councillor Nagle. Councillor Cordy, do you wish to speak?
Thanks, Matt. I have a couple of concerns with this permit application, and my major concern is the bushfire risk. It's the Chewton bushland is a very hazardous area, and I understand that while there's been this design work being done to mitigate the risk, and there's a defendable space around the proposed dwelling, and it probably measures something of the order of 80 metres of bush to be cleared, so that that somebody could defend the dwelling. But I still have grave concerns for people living in that area in the event of a fire on a very bad day. So that is a real concern for me, the safety of the purchasers or developers, whoever was to develop a dwelling on that site. I think it's a hazardous location, and that's a big issue for me. The other thing is it is a farming zone property of less than 100 acres, and so council isn't mandated to issue a permit, so it's at council's discretion. My other concern is that my understanding is that we've received 6 objections to the matter, which is a significant number, and I think a lot of those objections relate to the clearing of the bushland, and I think it does concern me when there's plenty of land or building sites around Castlemaine where people could be in a much safer situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Petruska.
Sorry, I was waiting to hear Councillor Cordy's objections to it before I decided which way I was going. Look, I'm going to support the motion, and I'll explain my reasons why. There wasn't an applicant objector meeting, and there was quite a number of issues raised. One of the main issues seemed to be the setback from Sparks Road, and the setbacks in the previous Chewton Bushlands estate was such that, generally speaking, the houses are not easily seen. I actually went past here today and I can see some of them, but and it's the second time I've been up there, but recently. But that was the objective. But one of the issues here is that this particular block was never part of the Bushlands estate to start with. That's number one. And number two is that the legislation has changed in relation to fire prevention. So when all the properties if all the properties are in the Bushlands estate now were to be built, applied for to be built tomorrow, they would probably have similar conditions to what this particular estate one has now. And that is that you would have to have a cleared defendable space. Now, that's not totally cleared. I might just confirm this with our director, Ms. Howard, in a minute. But my understanding is that the defendable space is not wholesale clearing of all the trees. It is thinning out. It'll certainly be cleared around the property where the section where the house is, but it doesn't mean wholesale clearing on the roadside. So there will still be, and as I said, I will confirm this with Ms. Howard in a second, there will still be screening of the house from the road. The house design itself is single story. It's not. It doesn't appear particularly intrusive in the design we have. Normally, it probably could be set back. If it wasn't for the defendable space requirement, it could easily be set back 60 metres from the road on the Sparks Road side and placed. But because it's got to have 32 metres defendable space around the entire house, that certainly limits on that particular piece of land by location. As for it being a farming zone, I take on board Councillor Cordy's concerns, but again, I was up there again today. It's the second time I've been up there, and it's effectively bushland. I have no idea why it's farming zone. because there's absolutely nothing, in my opinion, you could farm up there, and certainly there's no farming activity that I could see in any of the other properties. There is one heavily cleared property before you get to the house, that has got some vegetation in the ground now, but there's a massive shed on that that's highly visible from the road, and I'd suggest that that would be more visible presently than what the new house will be behind trees. And the other thing is that the Bell 29 building is required as part of the permit conditions. It was brought up, one other thing brought up by the objectors was that the person who owns the property and is applying for the planning permit may build the house and then sell it, or may sell the block with a planning permit. But that's not a reason for us to knock back a permit of any one of the people that live up there could sell a property any time also. So it's either it complies with the Planning Act, or it doesn't comply with the Planning Act, is my view. And the conditions on it are fairly onerous, and according to the plans, it does comply with the Planning Act and the provisions. I personally possibly wouldn't live up there so close to bushland, even with 32 metres clearing, but the reason it is close to the roads is so that in the current circumstances, if there was a fire, there's ready access to get out. So I would approve it. I will ask our director just to clarify that the clearing required for the defendable space does not mean wholesale clearing. I just want to clarify that is the case.
Thanks, Mayor and Councillor Petrusma. As I think was raised in the applicant objector meeting and has been discussed previously, the defendable space relates to the area within the property boundary, not in the road reserve, as you mentioned. That won't be impacted. The location in the southeast corner means that the area that needs to be cleared for the defendable space is reduced, because it also includes the area needed for the driveway and also the wastewater treatment area. They've all been consolidated into the one space, and the road reserve should not be impacted unduly by the development.
Thank you, Ms. Harden. So that completes your...
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Motion? I think there's anyone left. All right. Well, in that case, I'll ask those in favour and those against. Declare the matter carried. Thank you. So we're almost at the end of our agenda for tonight. So the next thing we have is, I think, agenda is delegates' reports, and the main delegate that's reporting is with our CEO, please. So hand over to the CEO to give his report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I'll be very quick. Councillors have got in front of them the list of meetings that you and I have been attending since the previous council meeting on 16th of September. A couple of items I will quickly mention, Mayor. There's a reference to a meeting that we had with the Regional Director of the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, and many of her senior staff, along with Jess Howard was there, and a number of our senior planning staff as well. It was a terrific meeting. It was initiated by our good friend Marg Allen at DELP, the Regional Director there, to talk about how do we do things better together, to make sure that when we've got referrals coming through the system that must go across to DELP, how do we make sure that they get dealt with as efficiently as possible? And we also had a great opportunity to talk about how do we ensure that strategic work that's happening is flowing through the system, whether that be ours or DELP's or both, as efficiently as possible as well, Mayor. And part of that was ensuring that we have a really good understanding about the work that each other has in front of us and the work that we want to have in front of us. And our manager of planning now or development services has a monthly meeting with the regional manager for strategic planning to be able to make sure that things are going to go through the system as quickly as possible, and that we're understanding where state direction might be headed, as well as them understanding the sort of things that we're going to be asking them for advice and direction on in the region as part of supporting us to get that through head office in Melbourne. So a really great meeting, Mayor, that we hope is going to be a really good benefit for many people in our community. The other one I'll mention, Mayor, because you probably won't, is I did get to attend the 2020 Municipal Association Victoria's Councillor Service Awards presentation. It was a Zoom presentation. There were a lot of councillors there, including yourself, who received the Mayor Emeritus Award, which, of course, as you know, Mayor, means that you have served as Mayor on 3 occasions for 1 year on each occasion. So just wanted to mention that. Big congratulations to you, Mayor. There were some fantastic achievements by many councillors recognised on that day, and yours was certainly one of the very impressive ones that was on the list, Mayor, so well done.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It was, yes, a Zoom MAV conference is a slightly, slightly less august occasion than the usual dinner and dancing afterwards. So never mind, it was, we had the awards, and it was, I found listening to, I think there was one councillor who had been on council for 35 years, and to hear them speak. They were a rural council, believe it or not, and I think it was West Wimmera. It was probably handed down from, well, let's say father to son. Though I think there are more women these days appearing in those deep rural councils, but yeah, very interesting to hear their perspective on how things have changed over time. Thank you. What a level of service. And thank you for that very interesting development with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. That is certainly very exciting news that we have that level of communication. That's such an important part of our work, and how we rely on good communications with that state, very important state government department. So terrific news. And thank you for keeping those relationships strong and building the mutual trust there so that we can have this happen. For my part, I think I just have to mention the Taradale Hall Annual General Meeting, which of course was tricky, given I think it was a small break in the rules. I mean, there was a period when we were allowed to meet outside with 10 or less people. Anyway, it happened, and so Taradale Hall Committee met outside and enjoyed the experience very much. They decided they'd continue to meet outside in the middle of the day rather than wait till night time. So when they realised that everyone is retired or is able to attend during the day. So that was good. The AGM was achieved. Probably be about it. So unless any councillors have any questions to ask the CEO, who's been busy as usual. And we will congratulate him on his good work, continuing, and say that no notices of motion, no urgent special business, no confidential items. So I'll declare the meeting almost closed, except I do have to say briefly, and councillors are actually having a bit of a celebration tonight, August, to celebrate the end of the council term, working together. I need to acknowledge that my fellow councillors, unfortunately Councillor Lester can't be with us, but it's been a very cohesive council, a very high functioning council, and my experience of 3 councils, when people have come and gone during each council too, it's probably been the one that's operated the best, I have to say, the way we've been able to listen and receive information from each other, as well as strongly presenting our case, of trusting our senior officers and our CEO, but at the same time grilling them rigorously. And yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job and I'm going to attribute a lot of the cohesion of this council to Councillor Machin, who is retiring as a councillor at the end of this term, the end of this week. She came in as mayor at probably a pretty low point in this term of council. If I won't go back over the details, but it was pretty challenging. Yeah, a lot of trust had been lost. There was a lot of despondency, a lot of fear, both within council, within the organisation, and in the community. And Councillor Machin stepped into the breach and took on the mayoral role for the end of first year. Got us to the end of that year. Was elected mayor for the next year, and did a fantastic job, amazing job of bringing new councillors in, helping them find their feet, what's going on. Councillor Patricia knew the ropes, but from a long time ago, so he needed a bit of a refresher. She just was able to, no, doesn't want me to talk anymore, but she was just very good. I remember hearing someone say, oh, well, she's not going to last the distance, it's going to be too hard. Well, she did. She not only lasted that year, but she kept on and did another year. And she brought us all into fantastic shape. And I reckon she's been one of the best mayors that this council's ever had. So thank you, Ron. You've done a great job. And it's been a privilege to follow in your wake in the, what I think is sometimes called the what is it? When someone fills the role of mayor in the last year of the term, it's meant to be not a very good look for getting re-elected, but guess what? Here I am, I'll be back, but not as mayor. So thank you very much, everyone, and huge thanks and congratulations to Bronwyn Machin for the work she's done. Thank you. And now I'll just have the meeting closed.